this might lead to overpopulation, but the Q designed the hedonists to only get pregnant after mating an enormous number of times. So the population was stable, and the hedonists filled their lives with eating, sleeping, and mind-blowing sex. Their minds were blissfully empty, because who needed to think when they're having such a good time? The insectophagy adapted to eat insects. They had claw-like hands to dig, long tongues to scoop up bugs, and leathery faces to protect from bites. They lived quiet, unnoticed lives on their obscure world, but little did they know they would play a key role in the fate of humanity. When the Q attacked, not all humans were captured. Some of them escaped into space and built homes inside hollowed-out asteroids. They adapted to zero gravity by growing long, spindly limbs, and pressurized digestive systems so that they could move around in space by farting from their highly evolved sphincters. These spaces changed to the point where they could never return to a planet with gravity, but they didn't care. They were comfortable in their weightless void worlds, and paid little attention to their human relatives on the planets below. So across the galaxy, these twisted posthuman species struggled to survive. They evolved, diversified, rose and fell, and most of them died out without the universe ever knowing they existed. Which is normal. Extinction is just as natural as speciation, and for each species that died out, new ones evolved to take their place, generating an ever-changing kaleidoscopic variety of life forms. And from this endless churn of life and death, some species rose up to achieve new kinds of sentience and civilization, like stars emerging from a dark fog. The scorching hot planet of the worms eventually cooled down, and life emerged onto the surface. The worms filled new ecological niches, evolving into serpentine grazers, swimmers, predators, and eventually people with human-like intelligence. The snake people had unique spiral-shaped brains that allowed them to observe and understand their world. They developed a hand derived from their ancestors' feet, and they built vast cities of tightly intertwined tunnels and homes. They enjoyed books, and music played as vibrations in the ground. The snake people may have looked alien, but their daily lives were full of joys and sorrows, hopes and dreams. Humanity. The predators evolved into the killer folk. Their deadly claws became grasping hands, and their saber teeth receded into organs of social display. Killer folk society was built around hunting and violence, and so their history was filled with war. For thousands of years, nomadic warriors with vast herds of once human livestock battled each other across a chessboard of continents. So their world is an archaeologist's dream, rich with the ruins of fallen kingdoms. But one faction of killer folk developed factory farming and rejected their violent past for a more peaceful, unified future. Some conservative factions kept to the old way, fanatically devoted to traditional warfare and hunting. These two factions came dangerously close to global conflict, but the killer folk managed to reconcile and survive. Underwater, the swimmers couldn't make fire, so they made a different kind of technology. They learned to breed their tools and machines. The tool breeders domesticated and modified other sea creatures, and built entire cities powered by organic life. Huge heart-like creatures pumped nutritious fluids through a network of self-healing conduits, like a living power grid. The breeders' homes were made from living shell and bone, with bioluminescent lights. They had televisions derived from cephalopod skin, medicinal sea squirts, weapons made from mollusks that fired teeth as ammunition. With genetic modification, stem cells, and tissue cultures, the tool breeders mastered the oceans, and even the small landmasses of their world. But they weren't content with just one planet. the tool breeders grew living spaceships and reached for the stars. The lizard herders were stunted and never achieved sentience, but the lizards thrived and eventually built civilizations, using the humans for transport, labor, and food. These lizards had no biological connection to humanity, but they took on a human-like cultural identity because they were influenced by the ruins of the Star People on their world. They realized what the Q had done to the humans, and feared that if the Q returned, they might suffer the same fate. For millions of years, the colonials were helpless fields of flesh, carpeting the shores of their world like algae. But they were resilient, and eventually they organized themselves, evolving from a homogeneous mass into differentiated colonies. Each cell specialized to perform different functions for the colony, and the colonies started competing against each other. Some colonies grew taproots to siphon resources from afar, or starfish-like feet to move around, or claws and poisons to attack other colonies. The winner of this evolutionary arms race was an intelligent colony called the modular people. In their vast industrial megalopolis, the people took a wide variety of shapes and sizes. They could combine themselves, or split apart, or exchange parts, all interchangeable cells playing a role in one great organism. So the modular people achieved the impossible, turning their miserable existence into a utopia where billions lived happy lives as part of the unified whole. The flyers diversified into many different species, as predators, herbivores, even swimmers. One species were like storks who waded through swamps to catch their prey. Their versatile feet, which had evolved to catch slippery fish, became articulate hands as they developed intelligence and society. Since these Terrasapiens could fly, they had a global mindset. Borders and nations made no sense when it was so easy to travel freely. People and ideas spread quickly across their planet, and they built an egalitarian society without strict social classes. They built cities of perches and fluting towers, harnessed nuclear power, and farmed their relatives on the ground for food. Though their civilization thrived, their bodies struggled to support their highly developed brains and their power of flight, so the Terrasapiens usually died by the age of 23. Keenly aware of their mortality, they appreciated every moment of their lives. Their philosophers pondered the meaning of life with feverish intensity, rapidly filling libraries with their tomes. The Terrasapien in this picture poses at a seaside resort. This 10-day vacation was the only holiday in her short life. Despite the crushing gravity of their world, the Lopsiders built an advanced civilization. Their pancake-flat buildings spread all over their world, and they developed spaceflight so that they could escape their planet and its oppressive gravity. To adapt to life on new worlds, they engineered a subspecies of themselves who could live in low gravity, called the asymmetric people. The asymmetric people thrived in the freedom of new worlds, but they had no love for their creators. The asymmetric people ruthlessly exterminated the Lopsiders on their homeworld, and went on to explore the heavens alone. The parasites and their hosts evolved symbiotic relationships. Like, some parasites used sharp senses to warn their hosts of predators, or provide weapons like venom for defense. In return, the hosts provided their nutritious blood, and developed specialized nesting sites on their bodies for the parasite to attach to, rich with blood vessels and protective fur. The parasites and hosts became inextricably linked, almost like they were one being. At first, the hosts were like horses being steered and influenced by the parasites, but eventually they became no more than puppets, totally controlled by the parasites through tactile and olfactory signals. The intelligent parasite civilization eventually developed technology that replaced the need for hosts. But they kept the hosts around for tradition and convenience. An average symbiote might start the day in a business host and then change to a comfortable domestic host at home after work. The world of the fingerfishes was full of scattered, isolated islands. So like the Galapagos or Madagascar on Earth, these islands were a seething evolutionary cauldron that gave rise to wildly diverse species. One line of fingerfishes evolved into the sail people. Their long fingers evolved into sails that could drive them effortlessly across oceans. They used their tongues to catch prey, and eventually their tongues split and articulated to be used as hands. The sail people needed strong memories to navigate the oceans and locate prey, so naturally they soon evolved intelligence. It took a long time to develop social and political stability, because their scattered and diverse world gave rise to a huge variety of creatures who fiercely competed. For generations, flotillas of tribal warriors and pirate societies battled in epoch-spanning conflicts, until finally one group of sail people became powerful enough to finally unify their world and make peace. Blood had stained the oceans for too long. The peaceful paradise of the hedonists seemed like it would never end, but over millions of years, nothing lasts forever. Geologic activity threw up clouds of dust that blocked the sun and killed most of the hedonists. Only a small mutant subset survived by escaping the reproductive limits of their ancestors. These satyriacs got their shit together and built an advanced self-sustaining civilization. But there were still traces of their hedonistic past remaining in their genes, so their societies retained a delightful streak of pleasure-seeking and promiscuity. Festivals, concerts, and ritualized orgies punctuated every working week. And now that pleasure was savored by sentient, self-aware people. The insectophagi started to look like their prey. Their leathery faceplates hardened and became part of their jaw. Their hands and feet developed into pincers, and their brains evolved intelligence. Like many others, the bug facers built a civilization, but they also faced a unique threat. They were attacked by an alien race. Little is known about these aliens, because not much survived in the historical record, but it took an intense series of wars on the ground and in orbit before the invaders were defeated, and this traumatic conflict gave the bug facers a pathological, xenophobic fear of all other species. So when the human species on other worlds started to reach out to each other, the bug facers stayed silent and withdrew from the galaxy. The spacers became even more alien in the void of space. Their fingers extended and split into tiny, grasping limbs. Their legs atrophied, relying on their farts to move instead. And in the weightless void of space, their brains expanded, till their every thought was far more vast and complex than anything that other humans could conceive. These asteromorphs spread to every star system in the galaxy, but they didn't interfere with other species. The asteromorphs had no need for planets, those ugly balls of dirt and ice and gravity. They stayed in the outer rims of star systems, silently watching over the galaxy like strange alien gods. The advanced post-human species started making contact with each other. The killer folk talked with the satyriacs, the tool breeders reached out from their ocean depths, the modular people and the Terrasapiens joined in, followed by the asymmetric people, Saurisapiens, and others. They didn't visit each other in person, because the interstellar distances were too large, but they cooperated by sharing knowledge and technology, and by keeping watch for alien invasions. They all had found the ruins of the Star People and the Q, and they didn't want to be attacked and changed again.